The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., January 23, 2025. I hereby appoint the Honorable Steve Womack to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 3, 2025, the chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with time equally allocated between the parties, with each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a valued member of my team and a true American patriot, Mr. Stephen Schao. Stephen has been my chief of staff since I first entered the House of Representatives in 2019. From day one, Stephen nurtured a high-functioning office dedicated to serving the people of Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. Over the course of 3 terms, Stephen consistently exceeded expectations and faithfully fulfilled his oath to the Constitution. Whether it meant staying up late to help a stranded constituent secure a passport or ensuring our service members at Fort Campbell have the safest barracks, Stephen's dedication to public service was unwavering. Under his leadership, my office has helped over 7,100 constituents with casework, a testament to his tireless efforts. Stephen is not only an exceptional leader, but also a remarkable mentor. He has spent countless hours guiding and supporting junior staff, many of whom have gone on to achieve great things. Stephen's generosity to others has been the hallmark of his time in the House of Representatives. He consistently encouraged his colleagues to do the right thing, even if it was the hard thing. He has a resolute commitment to faith, country, and those whom the Lord blesses him to lead and serve. His loyalty has meant the world to me and my team. For me personally, I most admire Stephen's humility. I often describe him as having an ability to humility ratio of infinity. At the beginning of the 118th Congress, my colleagues entrusted me with the chairmanship of the House Committee on Homeland Security, and amongst the most consequential decision I made after taking the gavel was to bring Stephen on as the staff director. I knew Stephen's strong work ethic and unwavering integrity made him the ideal choice to lead the committee's staff during a challenging time in America's history. As staff director, he navigated the complex impeachment proceedings of a sitting cabinet secretary, a first in our nation's history. Stephen also led the committee's efforts to write the border security portion of H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act. Additionally, Stephen spearheaded our efforts to modernize the Department of Homeland Security to address challenges of the 21st century. Thanks to his leadership, our nation is safer. Beyond his many accomplishments, Stephen will be dearly missed for the selfless love and unwavering support he's shown countless colleagues. Whilst shunning the spotlight and any recognition, this dedicated public servant has always put others first. His mentorship and wisdom, often delivered with a touch of Tolkienian wit, will be deeply missed. As he embarks on this new chapter, I wish him well, echoing the words of Gandalf the Grey, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that has been given us. Stephen has taken this advice to heart, always using his time in this body wisely and inspiring us all to do the same. On behalf of the people of the 7th District of Tennessee and the United States Congress, I wish him well as our nation calls him further up and further in towards another post serving our country. Thank you, Stephen. May God bless you.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, as a member of the Subcommittee on the Military and Foreign Affairs, I rise in strong opposition to the expansionist rhetoric that President Trump is directing toward America's strongest and long-standing allies and international partners. 4 days into the new administration, it's clear that the Trump foreign policy doctrine is motivated by territorial expansion and pseudo-revanchism, or the obsession to recover so-called lost land. This distorted worldview is anathema to America's historic role in defense of freedom across the globe. It also mirrors the imperial ambitions that have misled the likes of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping into exerting economic and military power to attack and threaten sovereign nations and the right of self-governing people in Ukraine, the Republic of Georgia, and Taiwan. In his inaugural address, President Trump pronounced that the U.S. will, quote, expand our territory, close quote. He has specifically proposed that we make Greenland great again by annexing the island from Denmark, which is a NATO ally, that he has threatened with tariffs unless it cedes to his demand. When asked if he would use military force to seize Greenland, President Trump refused to rule it out. The president has similarly suggested that the U.S. could annex Canada as the 51st state, vowing to wield economic retribution against a country that after World War II helped us establish the very rules-based international order that he is now attempting to subvert. As a matter of fact, since the First World War, more than 2 million Canadian Armed Forces personnel have fought right alongside, shoulder to shoulder, U.S. troops in defense of freedom and security in Europe, the Pacific Theater, Korea, Kosovo, Haiti, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Afghanistan. And nearly 120,000 Canadian service members have made the ultimate sacrifice in support of these U.S.-led operations. Just last year, Canada marked the 80th anniversary since over 14,000 of its Canadian soldiers stormed the beaches on D-Day alongside American troops. President Trump has also declared that he is, quote, taking back the Panama Canal, which returned to Panamanian control under the treaties negotiated by the U.S. and Panama in 1977. When asked if he would rule out the use of force to regain its control, the president refused to do so. The Republic of Panama is a strategic U.S. partner whose cooperation to combat drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and maritime piracy is vital to our national security. Understandably, our allies and international partners have responded to these expansionist threats by reaffirming their right to self-determination. The Prime Minister of Greenland stated, quote, our future and fight for independence is our business, close quote. The Foreign Minister of Denmark warned, we can't have a world order where big countries can just help themselves to what they want, close quote. The Prime Minister of Canada declared, the 51st state, that's not going to happen, close quote. And the President of Panama just alerted the United Nations Security Council that President Trump may be violating the UN Charter, which prohibits the use of threats and force against the territorial integrity or political independence of other states. Mr. Speaker, if President Trump continues to pursue expansionism at the expense of freedom and national security, America will join the ranks of gangster nations whose imperialist dictators violate international law just to expand their territorial power. As Russian President Putin tells it, Russia, quote, has no borders, close quote, and Ukraine is simply historically Russian land that's been stolen. President Xi has professed that Taiwan is China's, quote, sacred territory, and that reunification is a historic inevitability. An American president simply cannot be espousing similar views. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to firmly reject expansionist rhetoric and actions taken by President Trump. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm joined today by the Arkansas delegation, Mr. Womack, Crawford, and Hill, and we rise in honor of the life and legacy of Burl Franklin Anthony, Jr., who passed away on Saturday, January 11th. Mr. Anthony, born in El Dorado, proudly represented the 4th District of Arkansas in the House of Representatives from 1978 to 1993. His devotion to his family, friends, and his 24 years of public service and commitment to the natural state leave an indelible mark on his legacy. Not only do I share a connection with Mr. Anthony through proud service of the 4th District in the House of Representatives, but we're also both proud alumni of the University of Arkansas, and both represented the Razorback Athletics program. Mr. Anthony's history of public service began in Fayetteville at the university, and in 1963, with his Juris Doctorate in hand, he was ready to serve the people of Arkansas. After his time as State Assistant Attorney General and Deputy Prosecuting Attorney for Union County, Mr. Anthony chose to turn to private practice, serving as counsel for his fourth-generation family-owned timber company, Anthony Forest Products. Later, Mr. Anthony returned to public service, utilizing his background in law to lead several initiatives for Arkansas's criminal code reform and improving the professionalism of state prosecutors. In 1978, Mr. Anthony was sworn in as a member of Congress. Receiving the confidence of his fellow members, he served as the vice president for his freshman class. This proved to serve him well as he was appointed to the House Ways and Means Committee, where he was a leader in tax code negotiations. After countless wins in Congress, Mr. Anthony returned to private practice, still serving where he could through corporate boards or charitable organizations. A true son of the natural state, Mr. Anthony was a lover of the great outdoors and a genuine sportsman, teaching his grandchildren how to fish and spending his time photographing wildlife. I express my deepest sympathy to Mr. Anthony's wife, Sheila, his family, and all who benefited from his leadership, dedication, and tireless efforts, not only in the halls of Congress, but across the state of Arkansas. Mr. Speaker, I wish to yield such time as he may consume to Representative Hill.
Congressman Westerman, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be with you and Congressman Crawford and Congressman Womack in tribute to our friend and our late former member of Congress, Burl Anthony. His unwavering commitment to Arkansas and its people has left an indelible mark on our state and this institution. Born in El Dorado in 1938, Burl graduated from El Dorado High School and, as Bruce said, went on to become an Arkansas Razorback. He came to the People's House in 1979 as representative of the 4th District, and he brought a deep sense of responsibility and commitment to the people of L.A., Lower Arkansas. Over the next 14 years, he proved himself to be a tireless advocate, a thoughtful policymaker, and a champion for the working families in the 4th District. As a senior member of the Ways and Means Committee, he was instrumental in preserving Social Security's future through the Social Security Amendments Acts of 1983. I was a Senate staffer in the early 1980s, and I witnessed Burl's dedication to the natural state firsthand while working with the Arkansas delegation on the passage of the Arkansas Wilderness Act of 1984. At a time when politics often divided, Burl understood the power of working across the aisle, and that dedication enabled him to achieve lasting results for his constituents. His commitment to bipartisanship became personal. While attending new member orientation in Williamsburg, Virginia, Burl's daughter, Allison, met her future husband, Sam Bethune, the son of then Arkansas 2nd District Congressman Ed Bethune. Now that is an Arkansas small world bipartisan love story. Arkansas and our nation have lost a great public service in Burl. My deepest condolences to Sheila, Allison, Lauren, and the entire Anthony family. It's a privilege to have witnessed his service to our state and to our country. And I yield back to you, Mr. Westerman.
I yield back the balance of our time.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Kennedy, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the extraordinary life of Dr. Nellie B. King, a trailblazer, educator, mentor, and a dear friend whose impact on Western New York will resonate for generations to come. Dr. King exemplified what it means to dedicate one's life of service, excellence, and empowerment, particularly to the youth of Western New York, but to all her fellow human beings. Born and raised in Foxworth, Mississippi, Dr. King's journey from humble beginnings to becoming an educational pioneer is a testament to her resilience and determination. She earned her BA in Social Studies from Alcorn Agricultural and Mechanical College, a historically black college, followed by advanced degrees in education from Canisius College and Buffalo State College. With over 35 years in education, Dr. King made history as the first black superintendent of the Lackawanna City School District, where she served for 9 transformative years. Her innovative programs, including the Kids in Spotlight program, Lackawanna Center for Family Achievement, and the District Model AIDS program, set a high standard for educational excellence and student support. Under her leadership, the district embraced groundbreaking initiatives like reduced class size for early elementary school, extended day programs, and the Gear Up program, ensuring opportunities for all students to succeed. Dr. King's dedication to education was seen on a national scale. She contributed research to the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities, culminating in their report, Gaining the Arts Advantage, which emphasized the critical role of arts in education. Also, her service extended far beyond the classroom. Dr. King was a member of the Calvary Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, where her faith guided her work and inspired those around her. She was an active participant in organizations such as the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Women's Missionary Council of the CME Church, and the World Federation of Methodist Women, just to name a few. Most recently, Dr. King served as the president and founder of Unlimited Possibilities Overcoming Poverty Ministry, which provides guidance, leadership, and financial support to women from disadvantaged backgrounds who are enrolled in college or training school. Dr. King's contributions did not go unnoticed. Her numerous accolades include the National Association of Counties Achievement Award, the Buffalo Ambassador Award, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Award for Education. As a state senator, I had the privilege of honoring Dr. Nellie B. King as a 2019 Women of Distinction in the New York State Senate, a recognition that celebrated her lifelong dedication to education and bettering our community. Dr. King's influence extended to countless students, colleagues, and leaders in our community. She was not only an educator, but also a role model, a mentor, and a friend, someone whose wisdom and compassion were a beacon of hope and inspiration. Nellie was a loving mother to Benny Omar King and an adoring grandmother to Angelia Bernice King, both of whom will proudly carry on her legacy. As we remember Dr. King, let us honor her by continuing her work, advocating for education, investing in our children, fostering innovation, and uplifting those who need it the most. Her life reminds us that one person's dedication can transform not just individuals, but entire communities. Dr. Nellie B. King's legacy will live on in the lives she touched and the progress she championed, and will endure as a source of inspiration for us all. Thank you, Dr. King, for your boundless contributions, your unwavering faith, and your extraordinary vision. We will miss you deeply. We love you, and we will carry on your lessons and your legacy for generations to come. May Dr. Nellie B. King rest in peace and power. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I've been very fortunate, as have the people of my congressional district in the gold country of California, to have had guiding my office and shaping my decisions for many years now, a truly exceptional individual, Rocky Deal. He's going to retire at the end of this month to take on a long list of pent-up retirement and family projects, and I will miss his assistance and his advice greatly. His 15 years of service leading my congressional office was actually the second chapter of his service to our country. His first chapter was 28 years of distinguished service in the United States Navy. In those nearly 3 decades, He rose to the rank of captain and for 2.5 years commanded what Ronald Reagan called America's flagship, the aircraft carrier USS Constellation. This culminated in an eventful career in the Navy and naval aviation, including command of the USS Kalamazoo and command of the legendary Jolly Roger squadron of F-14 Tomcats off the USS Abraham Lincoln. During his command of the Jolly Rogers, the squadron earned the Battle E as the best fighter squadron in the Atlantic Fleet. While he commanded the USS Kalamazoo in 2 Gulf deployments, it was rated the best logistical squadron in the Atlantic. And during his command of the Constellation, it won more Battle E's than any other Pacific Fleet carrier during the Gulf and Indo-Pacific deployments. He concluded his career in the Navy as Chief of Staff to the Commander of the Pacific Naval Air Forces, responsible for 6 aircraft carriers, 2,000 aircraft, and 40,000 sailors. After retiring from the Navy, Rocky returned to his hometown of Susanville, California, where he took over the family automobile dealership first established there in 1929. He served on the Board of Trustees of Lassen College, where he also taught history, and the Board of Directors of Lassen Hospital. And he served in a wide range of civic organizations, including Rotary International, Boy Scouts of America, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. I first met Rocky campaigning for Congress in 2008 and was very fortunate to have him join my office the next year as District Director and then Chief of Staff. I, my staff, my constituents, and especially our country are all extremely fortunate to have had the benefit of his good judgment, calming influence, team-building leadership, and above all, an innate ability to soothe ruffled feathers, an art that's often in very high demand in my office. Despite my best efforts over the years, he's managed to maintain good relations with our local officials, district leaders, and a diverse range of constituents. John Boehner once told me that a good chief of staff allows a congressman to be a congressman, and Rocky's been successful in that throughout this last decade and a half. The progress we've made on forest management in this district that spans the western slope of the Sierra is in large part due to his constant interaction with local and federal officials and his total devotion to the businesses of our gateway communities around Yosemite. He cares deeply about the health and safety of the people of these mountain communities, about the struggles of local businesses, and the United States Congress. He has trained a first-rate team that will carry on as he leaves congressional service to enjoy time with his wife of 51 years, Gail, his 3 grown children, and his 8 grandchildren. But our entire team will miss him greatly and miss the wisdom as we bid him, as Lincoln put it, an affectionate farewell. So on my behalf, thank you, Rocky Deal.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Brown, for 5 minutes. Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the extraordinary life and legacy of Congressman Louis Stokes as we approach what would have been his 100th birthday. Born on February 23, 1925 in Cleveland, Ohio, Louis Stokes rose from humble beginnings to become a giant in the fight for civil rights and a champion for the underserved. And along with his brother, Cleveland Mayor Carl Stokes, he made history and made a difference for Northeast Ohio. His story is one of perseverance, service, and an unshakable belief in the promise of this nation. A veteran of the United States Army, an attorney who argued landmark cases before the Supreme Court, and a lifelong voice for the voiceless, Congressman Stokes' path was paved with courage and conviction, diligence and determination, and a deep and abiding commitment to justice. In 1968, he became the first Black representative for Ohio, bringing much-needed representation to this chamber. During his 15 terms in the House, Congressman Stokes advocated for the poor, fought for civil rights, and supported our service members and ensured that communities like my district in Cleveland received the resources and representation they deserved. And as one of 13 founding members of the Congressional Black Caucus, he helped advance civil and human rights and promote economic empowerment. Today, the CBC has grown to a historic 62 members because of the work of Louis Stokes, Shirley Chisholm, and their generation. His legacy lives on through the laws he championed and the institutions that bear his name, from the Louis Stokes Cleveland VA Medical Center and the Stokes Health Science Library at Howard University to the Lou Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation in STEM. Yet, what resonates most with me and with so many in our district is his humanity. He never forgot where he came from, nor did he ever lose sight of who he served. Throughout his life, he carried with him a deep sense of purpose and a steadfast belief in power of government to do good. I am humbled to serve in the district, Ohio's 11th congressional district, that Congressman Stokes called home. I hope to honor his legacy by striving to be worthy of the standard he set. As we reflect on his life, let us commit ourselves to the ideals he held dear and the people he so passionately served. Mr. Speaker, on his centennial, I would like to say thank you, Congressman Stokes. Your life and contributions were a gift to our district, our state, and our nation. Mr. Speaker, that's okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during Black History Month and throughout the year, it is important that we honor the legacies of those that come before us today. Today, I rise to reflect on the remarkable story that hits close to home. I recently learned that a late resident of Northeast Ohio, Alma Gladys Minter, served as a tech sergeant in the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. Ms. Minter was part of a legacy that demonstrated the strength, resilience, and determination of African American women. The 6888 was the first and only all-Black women's Army Corps unit to serve overseas during World War II. In February 1945, nearly 850 women were assigned to a vital task, ensuring letters continued to flow between soldiers on the front lines and their families back home. Their assignment was daunting, clearing a backlog of over 17 million pieces of mail in Europe. In less than 90 days, they completed this Herculean task in half the time expected by the Army. The women of the 6888 endured freezing warehouses, relentless schedules, and twin enemies of racism and sexism. Their motto, "No mail, low morale," speaks to the importance of their work. However, in a stark injustice, their hard work was not formally recognized after the war. They didn't join in the Victory Day parades, and their story was not told in mainstream accounts. However, Ms. Minter's family in Ohio knew her story, as did the families of the communities that were home to the 6888 veterans in the decades that follow. In 2022, I was deeply honored to vote for legislation awarding the 6888 the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor bestowed by this body. It was a long overdue recognition for their extraordinary contributions. The 6888 Gold Medal has been minted, and in the months to come, it will be formally presented, forever serving as a reminder of the heroes like Ms. Minter, who stepped up when our country needed them most. The story of Ms. Minter and the 6888 is one of service, resilience, and the pursuit of justice. And their story is part of not just Black history, but American history. To Ms. Minter and all the women of the 6888, we say a long, long overdue thank you. Your service will not be forgotten, and your legacy will continue to shine brightly for generations to come. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentlewoman now yields back the balance of her time. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the March for Life.
Without objection.
Life is a miracle and it must be protected. I have this small camouflage backpack I've carried in the General Assembly for 7 years, and now in Congress with the small baby sock to remind us of our most vulnerable. This week I was proud to co-sponsor the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, legislation that continues House Republicans' theme for the 119th Congress, common sense measures. This bill requires that healthcare providers treat babies born alive following an abortion or attempted abortion with compassion and dignity. I encourage all of my colleagues across the aisle to vote for life in favor of this legislation. And as thousands of people come to our nation's capital and rally to support the right for life, I'd like us all to take a moment and remember the millions of unborn feet this small sock could have warmed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize January as Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. It can happen anywhere, and it can impact anyone, regardless of race, religion, or creed. During my time in the Virginia legislature, I fought on the legislative front lines to stiffen felony penalties for human traffickers. Now, as a member of Congress, I'm going to continue the fight, and I encourage everyone to help raise awareness so we can save lives. Whether it's learning more about the telltale signs of human trafficking or reaching out to your local authorities to learn about their efforts, if you see something, say something, do something. So I encourage everyone to do their homework, learn more about human trafficking, and join the fight to protect the vulnerable. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, for her entire 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, eggs in my district are $9.19, or as one resident said, it's $10 to buy eggs, Rashida. I want you to think about this because the federal minimum wage is $7.25 right now. So grocery prices we know are out of control and our government is failing to lower costs for working families. This is why my residents don't call it the minimum wage, they call it the starvation wages. It's been 16 years since Congress has raised the federal minimum wage. But let's get to the core value here of understanding this, that a mother in our country right now can work for an hour and not be able to afford eggs. So it's really unacceptable, and I've heard the reasons, but they still don't add up. It's unacceptable that billionaires and corporations are consolidating their power and price gouging the American people, our families. This crisis should be our focus. I understand that there's many dynamics, right, that they keep putting forward. But why aren't we doing anything about it? Because fear and division keeps us distracted from what really is going on. Those that are rich and wealthy in our country are becoming richer under every single decision I've seen so far. One glaring thing, again, in the 200 executive orders that we've seen this week, is missing any mention of lowering the grocery prices for our families, not one word. We know there's been promises made by this current administration that they're going to lower costs for Americans on day one. But 3 weeks into the new Congress, we haven't seen a single bill to come up to the floor on this issue. In my district, they are drowning in high cost of health care. And don't get me started about our auto insurance, which is now up 40%, many paying almost the cost of rent, the cost of their mortgage to have auto insurance, which is required by law to have if you have a vehicle. Instead, we're seeing threats of tariffs that will drive grocery prices higher. Instead, we see them getting rid of protections for discriminatory actions by companies, by actors that we know fully intend to benefit from racist policies. I know that doesn't matter to the current president and his billionaire friends. They don't worry about the cost of a carton of eggs or milk or groceries, especially when the three wealthiest men in America who were sitting right behind the current president at his inauguration, their combined worth, so the American people understand, is $911 billion. It is clear that the billionaires now control our government. And this chamber can't let that happen. We need legislative action to lower the cost of living for the American people. Trust me, this is a bipartisan issue. Every corner of our country is asking us to do something about this. These are issues that, again, matter to many, many families. That's why my residents care about it so much. So please, stop with the fear-mongering and the hate. And I know you're distracting us because you're helping your billionaire friends, but you're hurting so many American people that are drowning right now with the high cost of living. Mr. Speaker, immigrants in our country are already under attack, especially our undocumented neighbors. These are hateful and divisive executive orders and a violent assault on our communities and our country. Our very identity, as we all know, is a nation of immigrants. I wouldn't be here as a child of immigrants. My father, only fourth grade education, was able to work in the auto plant line. My mother, only eighth grade education, and they were able to achieve the American dream, to see their daughter become a United States Congresswoman. What are we doing instead of embracing that identity? We're punishing sanctuary cities that embrace our immigrant neighbors. We're dismantling asylum and humanitarian parole. We're dehumanizing our immigrant neighbors. We're banning all refugees, even those who waited patiently for years, following the law, had flights booked, already cleared, denied entry. We're laying the groundwork already, he's already doing it, for the Muslim ban. Many of our neighbors, myself, my family, all of us, even though it's not directly targeted towards us, attacking a whole faith is un-American. Sending ICE to schools, hospitals, churches is hateful and divisive. He's even trying to override the 14th Amendment of the Constitution to end birthright citizenship. And so it's clear for my residents and folks around the country, there is absolutely no doubt, if you are born in the United States, you are a U.S. citizen. The president does not have the authority to change that, period. And we must fight back to prevent these policies rooted in racism and white nationalism. That means opposing plans for mass deportation. Please, families, protect each other. There's nothing to do with public safety. They just want us distracted so they can help their billionaire friends become richer.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
That I yield.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president and vice. Now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize a critical gap in school nutrition affecting students across this great nation. Today, I will introduce the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act, a much-needed win for students, parents, schools, and dairy farmers across America. This bipartisan legislation expands milk options in school meal programs to include whole and 2% milk and addresses a critical gap in child nutrition. We all know that milk is an essential source of 13 vital nutrients, including several under-consumed nutrients such as calcium, vitamin D, and potassium. These are foundational for building strong bones, maintaining healthy blood pressure, and supporting overall development. However, in order for kids to benefit from these nutrients, they need to actually consume the milk. As we all know, kids deserve options and choice when it comes to choosing milk at lunchtime. Unfortunately, thanks to flawed federal policy based on outdated science, since 2012, schools have been prohibited from serving whole or reduced fat milk in school lunchrooms. We all know whole milk tastes the best because it is the best, and it is long overdue that kids in our nation's schools have access to the most naturally nutritious beverage available to them. According to the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, nearly 90% of Americans, including our children, fail to meet their daily dairy intake recommendations. Thanks to the federal ban on whole milk, we have lost an entire generation of milk drinkers, and along with them, hardworking dairy farmers across this country have suffered. When students are presented with limited, unpopular milk options, they drink less milk and are more likely to turn to sugary, caffeinated alternatives that offer little nutritional value. Research has repeatedly shown that whole and 2% milk are not only not responsible for childhood obesity, but several studies show that children who consume whole milk are less likely to experience obesity and have healthier levels of body fat. Since whole milk was banned from school lunches, body mass index scores, rates of obesity, and the prevalence of diabetes among young people have increased significantly. According to one case study, childhood obesity rates climbed 13 percentage points between 2008 and 2020. Clearly, whole milk was not the problem when it came to childhood obesity. Emerging science supports what many parents already know. Whole milk is a nutritious and satisfying option for their children. Whole Milk for Healthy Kids doesn't mandate schools to serve whole milk or for any student to drink milk, but rather gives them the flexibility to meet the preferences and nutritional needs of their students. Importantly, this bill aligns with parental choice, empowering schools to offer a wider range of milk options that mirror what kids enjoy at home. This is not just about nutrition, it's about practicality. Low-income children who rely on school meals for a majority of their daily dairy intake deserve access to nutritious and appealing options. By reintroducing whole and reduced fat milk to school lunchrooms, we can combat food waste, support local dairy farmers, and ensure that our children are well-fed and ready to learn. This crucial legislation already has broad support from the farming community, school groups, members across the aisle, and senators across the Capitol. Thank you especially to my partner on this legislation here in the House, Dr. Kim Shire, who, as well as my Senate counterparts Roger Marshall, Peter Welch, Dave McCormick, and John Fetterman, for joining me in introducing this common sense effort. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to introduce this common sense solution that provides essential nutrients to our nation's youth and supports America's dairy farmers. And I urge all of my colleagues to support this legislation. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez, for 5 minutes.
If I can bring this down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor Rich Kong, Assistant Vice President for Civic Engagement at Illinois' third own North Park University, for his lifelong commitment to civic justice and civil rights. Rich's parents, Ray and Susan, came to the United States as refugees of the Korean War and arrived in Chicago after immigration quotas were removed by the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. Inspired by his family's commitment to their faith and service, Rich attained his master's in divinity and began his career at North Park University by coordinating their urban ministry program. Nearly 15 years later, through his leadership at the Center for Civic Engagement, Rich exemplifies the transformative power of education to promote civic engagement and foster stronger, more connected communities. Through initiatives like the Catalyst program, Rich has created opportunities for students to engage deeply in Chicago and with Chicago residents, learning directly from local leaders of color and working collaboratively to address pressing social issues. Rich's work reminds us that when our universities invest in civic engagement, they're not only shaping the next generation of leaders, they're strengthening the fabric of our very own communities. On behalf of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District, I want to commend Rich Kong for his commitment to promoting civic engagement, his leadership at North Park University, and his dedication to live out his faith through public service. Thank you, Rich. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a dedicated educator and my constituent from Bensonville, Illinois, Laura Avila Peterson. Laura's commitment to fostering civic engagement ensures that her students are prepared to be active, informed participants in our democracy. Laura is an experienced high school educator specializing in bilingual social studies and supporting English language learners at Fenton High School. And over the past 5 years, she's taught grades 9 through 12, fostering inclusive environments that celebrate their diverse backgrounds of the students that she serves. Her dedication to supporting English language learners is evident in her tailored approach to teaching. I recently had the privilege of meeting Laura and speaking with her bilingual civics class at Fenton High School. Together, we talked about how we build a multiracial democracy and the importance of uplifting students as they engage in civic life, particularly by creating multilingual spaces, regardless of their immigration status, for them to be able to talk about what they see in the news, how they experience it, and how they belong in this country. On behalf of Illinois 3rd Congressional District, I commend Laura Avila Peterson for her dedication to education and the invaluable contributions in shaping the next generation of leaders. Thank you, Laura. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and the legacy of Jose Chacha Jimenez, a beloved community organizer and activist, founder of the Young Lords, and one of the architects behind the Chicago's original Rainbow Coalition. To this day, the Rainbow Coalition is remembered as a powerful model of multiracial unity and solidarity that continues to inspire all of us. Chacha was born in Puerto Rico and eventually moved with his family to Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood in the midst of city's planned urban renewal, or today we would call it gentrification. Chacha and his peers faced housing and educational discrimination and harassment at the hands of the police and were motivated to create the Young Lords organization to protect themselves and the Puerto Rican neighbors. Under Chacha's leadership, the Young Lords evolved into a political organization that hosted free breakfast programs for children, free community medical clinics, and other projects of survival. Through his work, he connected with other activists organizing in their own low-income communities across the city. And on April 4th, 1969, Chacha co-led an effort to form the Rainbow Coalition, an anti-racist, multiracial, working-class movement uniting the largely Puerto Rican Young Lords in Lincoln Park, the Black Panther Party on Chicago's South and West Side, and the Young Patriots representing poor Appalachian whites in the Uptown neighborhood. These organizations connected after beginning to understand that their shared conditions that they were facing had more commonality than division, particularly in their largely poor neighborhoods. Chacha, Fred Hampton of the Black Panthers, and William Preacherman Vesperman of the Young Patriots helped the organizations overcome their differences and understand their potential in collaborating to organize their working class communities. Together, the Rainbow Coalition united these three organizations to cooperate on projects of survival, demonstrate solidarity of each other at protests, at pickets across the city, and in memory of Chacha's passing and in honor of his contributions to uniting our communities, I want to commend him and leaders of the original Rainbow Coalition. May their legacy be a powerful reminder that we are in fact stronger together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back the balance of her time. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Klein, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor former Rockingham County Administrator Stephen King on his well-deserved retirement after a lifetime of public service to Virginia's 6th District. Stephen earned his degree in civil engineering from Virginia Military Institute in Lexington. He went on to work for the city of Buena Vista as a civil engineer and worked his way up to assistant city manager. From there, he accepted an offer to become Rockingham County's Director of Public Works and Supervisors in 2016. He brought his level-headedness and no-nonsense approach to oversee a period of some of the county's largest growth, helping to establish a positive reputation for Rockingham County as a great place to live and do business. Stephen always took care to come into contact with. I wish him, his wife Mary, and his entire family the best as he begins this new chapter in his life. He is a shining example of the leadership that every local government hopes to have. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 21, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. The radical left's policies have led to an unacceptable reality, abortion on demand, even up to the point of birth in some states. This is a profound injustice to the most vulnerable among us, the innocent lives that cannot speak for themselves. Every life is precious, Mr. Speaker, a divine gift from God. Every baby deserves the same opportunity for life. This vital legislation ensures that those who survive an attempted abortion are not abandoned, but instead receive the full medical attention that they require. The Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act mandates that doctors and medical personnel provide immediate, life-saving treatment and guarantee that these newborns are admitted to a hospital without delay. This should not be a partisan issue. It is a basic acknowledgement of our shared humanity. We must protect the most defenseless among us and ensure that every baby has a fighting chance at life. With the new administration, we have a tremendous opportunity to advance this critical legislation and make it a reality. I will always stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. No child should be denied their fundamental right to life or the vital care they need to survive. Every life matters, and every baby's life is worth fighting for. We must ensure that our laws reflect our commitment to protecting the most innocent among us. I urge my colleagues to support the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Sykes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I rise to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. While most people don't equate national parks with metropolitan areas and sprawling suburbs, Ohio's 13th district is proud to be the home of the nation's most beautiful landscape, which is the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. In 1974, Congress created the Cuyahoga Valley National Park as some of the land was designated as parkland, but it was the leadership of former Congressman Ralph Regula who slipped in a few words into an appropriations bill in the year 2000 that was ultimately signed into law by President Bill Clinton. The few words that he slipped in said that they were going to redesignate the Cuyahoga Valley National Recreation Area to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. In the 50 years since the park was established, staff and volunteers in our community have worked hard to renew this natural and cultural resource for generations to come. The park is a vibrant landscape that is enjoyed by many all across the country each year. The park permanently preserves 33,000 acres of beautiful forest, portions of the Ohio and Erie Canal, and parts of the Cuyahoga River. The Cuyahoga Valley National Park is one of Ohio's natural treasures, drawing 3 million visitors each year, making it the 9th most visited park in America. The Cuyahoga Valley National Park is unique. As I said before, it sits between urban areas of Akron and Cleveland, but stepping into the park makes you feel like you are worlds away from the hustle and bustle of an urban life. The winding Cuyahoga River gives way to deep forests, rolling hills, and open farmland. Some of the park's trails also connect to the Buckeye Trail, which connects all four corners of our great state. As the only national park in the state of Ohio, it offers residents and tourists alike an opportunity to reconnect with nature, boost their physical and mental health, and explore our region's rich natural history. This anniversary would not have been possible without the dedicated community members, park staff, rangers, volunteers, and tourists who have protected, preserved, and visited this invaluable resource for over 50 years. Thank you for all that you do on behalf of Ohio's 13th Congressional District. So once again, let me say congratulations to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park on its 50th anniversary, and we look forward to 50th anniversaries to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back the balance for time. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Kaptur, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the pardons this week of violent felons who attacked our Capitol, injuring 174 of our Capitol police, were a sacrilege against our republic and our Constitution. Their actions were an affront on decency and a violent attack on the rule of law. Americans nationwide are outraged. 140 law enforcement officers were assaulted and 174 sustained injuries. Officer Brian Sicknick died. Those who engaged in violence against law enforcement officers must be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. I will soon introduce the Brian Sicknick Heroic Law Enforcement Officers Protection Act. This bill aims to strengthen penalties for those who assault law enforcement officers on federal property. It provides enhanced support for officers injured in the line of duty. This legislation is named in honor of U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. He tragically lost his life in the line of duty defending this Capitol on January 6, 2021. His selfless service and ultimate sacrifice will never be forgotten. My legislation will include enhanced penalties for assaults on law enforcement officers for individuals who assault officers on federal property with potential sentences including life imprisonment. It will include improved health benefits for officers. It will guarantee full health benefits throughout their service, retirement, and for those injured in the line of duty, including the 140 officers assaulted and 174 injured on January 6, 2021. As one member who was held against her will in this Capitol on January 6, 2021, I can guarantee you this bill deserves swift passage. Additionally, it will provide enhanced support for injured officers by providing eligible officers with access to necessary protective services. The brave men and women of law enforcement put their lives on the line every day to protect our communities and our nation. This legislation is a necessary step toward honoring their service. It will ensure they have the support they deserve and that the United States of America reveres them and the rule of law to which they dedicate their lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back the balance of her time. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by guest chaplain, Chaplain Judy Milana, United States Navy Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremony Staff, Washington, D.C.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you are the creator and sustainer of all life, the God of new beginnings. And because of this, we humbly invoke your presence among us here this afternoon inside the United States Capitol, the People's House. Dear Lord, may those of the House of Representatives be faithful stewards of the higher purpose of their calling. Grant them discerning hearts of wisdom as they work together in a spirit of unity to carry out the promises of our Constitution and our enduring democracy. Most merciful God, may your grace fill the chamber of this honorable assembly. Bring our lawmakers clarity of mind in the midst of the complexities of the issues they face. Strengthen them, their families, their loved ones who support them. And, O sovereign Lord, continue to hold our nation in the very hollow of your hands. May your peace permeate and prevail in the heart, mind, and soul of the American people. And for all of us, may we ever strive to act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with you in service to our nation and each other with utmost compassion, gratitude, and love. And we ask these things in your most holy and precious name. Amen.
The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize January as National Blood Donor Month. Since its inception in 1970, National Blood Donor Month has aimed to increase blood and platelet donations during one of the most challenging times of the year for collecting blood products, the winter months. In my district, the Centre County Commissioners have officially proclaimed January as National Blood Donor Month in Centre County, joining the nationwide effort to honor and celebrate those who selflessly roll up their sleeves to help patients in need. Since July 2024, the Central Pennsylvania chapter of the American Red Cross has held 101 blood drives in Centre County, collecting over 3,000 units of blood. According to the Red Cross's Centre County operations, this is the highest count in the region. Mr. Speaker, it's staggering to realize that someone in this country needs blood once every 2 seconds. By the time I finish the speech, nearly 30 people will require access to a blood transfusion. Blood donations are critical because the supply relies entirely on the generosity of donors. It cannot be manufactured or stockpiled. To meet patients' needs, the Red Cross must collect approximately 12,500 units of blood every single day. Mr. Speaker, I urge everyone listening to visit redcrossblood.org and click on the Donate Blood tab to find a blood drive nearby. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the extraordinary life of James Sears, a truly remarkable Eastern North Carolinian. Mr. Sears was a dedicated advocate and a steadfast supporter of communities across our region. He served on the Gates County Board of Elections. He was an active member of the NAACP, his home church, New Hope Baptist Church in Gatesville. So many organizations, but one that he loved and devoted over 30 years to, the Eastern North Carolina Civic Group. He always prioritized the needs of others. His unwavering commitment to families across Eastern North Carolina was evident in all that he did. We are incredibly grateful for his contributions and the positive impact he's made on so many lives. His passing has left a void in our community that will be deeply felt. My heart goes out to his family, the Eastern Civic Group, to the Gates County community, as we now remember and celebrate his legacy. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the House and ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the Huntington County, Pennsylvania institution, which is celebrating a milestone anniversary. This year, Shavers Creek Grange number 353 will mark the 150th anniversary of its founding with a series of events, including a fellowship event that reflects the organization's mission to embrace community members from across generations. Defined by its endorsement, the organization's motto, and that motto is, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, liberty, and in all things, charity. On behalf of everyone in Pennsylvania's 13th Congressional District, I congratulate the Shavers Creek Grange on this sesquicentennial milestone and thank its members for their continued work to strengthen the community, to make the fabric of their ideals a part of each and everyone's life in Huntington County, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Very small instances. President Trump's excuse last night for freeing the January 6 violent criminals. To the 140 dedicated police officers who were injured that day, to the officer who was crushed in a door and had to protect his eye from being gouged out, to the officer who was punched with a flagpole. This was hardly Trump's day of love. Now he has released these criminals back to their communities. One boasted of buying guns. Another would, quote, turn up the heat in the spirit of vengeance. Total disrespect for law enforcement, unleashing a heightened threat to the safety of families in communities across this country. And by freeing the leaders of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, who were convicted of seditious conspiracy, Trump seems to be following the example of the authoritarian leaders he has admired and telling them to stand back and stand by his private militias available to crush any opposition at the slightest dog whistle. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Iraq has been oppressed by kleptocrats who support Iranian terrorism. Sadly, Iran-backed militias, the Badr organization, are part of the Iraqi government, including the National Security Advisor. Badr was armed by terrorist Soleimani. Iran-backed militias in Iraq should be designated as terrorists, as Congressman Greg Steube and the Republican Study Committee have proposed. There must be sanctions on kleptocrat politicians complicit with Iran, such as former Prime Minister Maliki. Any aid to Iraq should be conditioned, not going to terrorists. Brett McGurk's policy of replacing ISIS with Iran has failed. President Donald Trump will reinstitute policies of maximum pressure on Iran, stopping Iraq purchases of Iranian electricity as he responds to the Tehran regime to plot to assassinate him while they were shouting death to Israel, death to America. In conclusion, God bless our troops as the global war on terrorism continues. Open borders for dictators puts all Americans at risk of more attacks, as warned by the FBI. Trump is protecting American families. Americans oppose rigged elections in Georgia and support the legitimate President Salome Zurfishvili of Georgia as protest bill for free and fair elections in the nation of Georgia. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized. For what purposes does he seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
All right. Okay. We're going to go with that. Mr. Speaker, I rise today not just as a member of Congress, but as a physician who has treated patients for 30 years. And I want to express my strong opposition to the House Republican Reproductive Health Care Surveillance Act. Let me make one thing clear. Over my 30 years of practice, I have come to treat patients in the most difficult times of their lives, and I understand fully well that no one but the doctor and the patient should be in that examination room. Like any other issue, abortion care is medical care and needs to be treated by a physician trained to deal with that very difficult situation for women. Unfortunately, the bill we're considering today undermines medical expertise and seeks to bully physicians into not providing the care that they've been trained to provide according to the best medical science. This bill is just another attempt to strip women of their reproductive freedom by pushing misinformation that endangers not only the lives of women, but the public health at large. Like with any other medical issue, politicians are not equipped, generally not trained, to manage the health care of patients, but we hope they will address the important needs of public health. Let the doctors and patients lead the way on health care, and let women make the decisions that it's their right to make.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Indiana seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor an exceptional leader, dedicated public servant, and my dear friend, Major General Dale Lyles, Adjutant General of the Indiana National Guard. General Lyles' journey of service began when he enlisted in the Indiana Army National Guard in 1986. Over the years, he's demonstrated dedication and leadership in every role. His service included key positions such as commander of the 219th Engineer Brigade and Chief of Staff for the Indiana National Guard, where he oversaw operations and strategic initiatives. In 2019, General Lyles was appointed Adjutant General of the Indiana National Guard by our Governor, Eric Holcomb. Since then, he's led efforts to modernize the force, ensuring Indiana's National Guard is prepared to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. Under his leadership, the Guard has excelled in responding to national disasters, deploying overseas in defense of our freedoms, and serving our communities in times of crisis. His unwavering commitment to the well-being of his soldiers and their families has had a lasting impact in Indiana and beyond. As he retires from nearly 40 years of service to the United States, it's my honor to recognize Major General Dale Lyles for his outstanding service and dedication to a grateful state and nation. On behalf of Indiana's 9th District and a grateful country, thank you, General Lyles, for your years of service, of sacrifice to America. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to share the story of Milagros Heredia, a dreamer who calls my district home. Milagros was a baby when her mother carried her across the border for a better life. At 8 months old, Milagros was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Specialists gave her a 15% chance of survival, and she defied the odds. Now 22, she's a student at Grand Canyon University studying to become an oncologist. But like many dreamers, she lives in constant fear of losing everything. Because of executive orders proposed by President Trump and the Laken Riley Act, Milagros and more than 20,000 dreamers in Arizona live in fearful uncertainty. Arizona is their home. This country is their home. They are American in every way that matters. It's past time for Congress to provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers and for Democrats to stand up to Trump's un-American policies. Thank you. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Nebraska seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the remarkable life of one of our greatest Nebraskans, Jack Hoffman. For over a decade, Jack's story captured the hearts and minds of Americans and Nebraskans as he battled brain cancer. Through it all, the Cornhusker State cheered him on. In 2013, Jack made national news when he ran for a 69-yard touchdown during the Husker spring game. In that moment, Jack became a symbol of perseverance and hope for kids and families grappling with pediatric brain cancer. To help others facing the same battle, his family founded the Team Jack Foundation to support research on pediatric brain cancer. When Jack passed last week, our entire state mourned his loss. His legacy will be forever etched in the hearts of Nebraskans. He joins his father, who also died of brain cancer, a very good friend of mine, and somebody that I know welcomed his son into heaven with open arms. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Yesterday, we marked 52 years since the Supreme Court issued its landmark ruling in Roe v. Wade. We should be celebrating 52 years of reproductive freedom. Instead, nearly 3 years after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, we live in a very different America. In North Carolina and across the country, women cannot access vital health care services, and doctors are being criminalized for simply doing their jobs. We now have a president back in the White House who's bent on restricting access to women's health care even further. On President Trump's first day in office, his administration even removed a federal webpage that offered important reproductive health information. While the next 4 years will bring immense challenges, we cannot give up the fight for a country where women can make decisions about our own bodies and our own health care. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I rise to celebrate Lunar New Year, Seollal, which is called in Korean, and Tet Festival in Vietnamese, as we ring in the year of the snake. Snakes are mysterious, smart, alert, determined, and calm. We enter this new year with the same calmness, wisdom, and alertness, standing ready, steady and ready to take on any challenges or opportunities that come our way. So I wish success, good health, and blessings for you and your family in the new year. In Congress, I will embody the calm determination of the snake as I build on my record of effectiveness and deliver results for our Southern California communities. So let me wish everybody Happy New Year. In Korean, 새해 복 많이 받으세요. In Mandarin, 新年快乐. In Cantonese, Gong Ye Fa Choi. Vietnamese, Chok Mong Nam Moi. Happy New Year. With that, I yield back.
Does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Brother Ronald Gallagher, who passed away earlier this month after a distinguished life of service to Lasallian education. Brother Ron was a son of California. He took his final vows in 1972 and went on to earn his PhD in comparative literature. He began teaching at the high school level before joining the faculty at St. Mary's College of California in the early 1980s. After a successful teaching career, Brother Ron served as the college president from 2005 until 2013. As president emeritus, after his term as president, he oversaw academic and athletic facility improvements and was honored for his work during all of that time with the naming of the Brother Ron Gallagher Baseball Stadium at St. Mary's. Brother Ron will be remembered for his vocation, for his sense of humor, love of sports, and passion for literature. Please join me in recognizing Brother Ronald Gallagher for a life of unwavering commitment to service, education, his faith, and his community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. The Birthright Citizenship Act is a necessary step to restore integrity to our immigration system. The 14th Amendment was never intended to grant citizenship to children of individuals who enter or remain in the country illegally. The purpose of the 14th Amendment was to guarantee full rights to freed slaves, not to fuel illegal immigration or exploit U.S. citizenship through birth tourism. Today, 1 in 10 births in the U.S. is to an illegal immigrant mother, and nearly 400,000 of these mothers come across the border illegally every year to give birth. The drafters of the 14th Amendment couldn't have imagined that that's how it would be twisted to make that somehow legal. The loophole also fuels a global birth tourism industry, further undermining the integrity of our laws. Citizenship is one of America's most precious privileges. By closing these loopholes, this legislation prioritizes the rule of law and the interests of American citizens. It's about fairness, not to protect the value of U.S. citizenship. I go back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, we really need to. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to honor Mary Barley of Isla Mirada, Florida, to celebrate her much-deserved induction into the Everglades Hall of Fame. Mary and her late husband, George, brought unmatched passion and commitment for decades to saving America's Everglades. For instance, this award-winning advocate was pivotal in helping pass the bipartisan Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan in 2000. This landmark legislation authorized the world's largest ecosystem restoration effort, one that continues to guide our renewal efforts today. Mary is also a founding director of the Everglades Foundation, the leading scientific advocacy and educational group working to restore this ecological treasure. Mr. Speaker, Mary Barley has been more than a leading bipartisan force in the historic quest to save the River of Grass. She's been a mentor, friend, and role model to generations of young environmentalists who were fortunate to learn from her passion and devotion to this cherished ecosystem. We are so fortunate to have a persuasive advocate to preserve and protect this unique and magnificent ecosystem. Mary's induction into the Everglades Coalition Hall of Fame is timely and well-deserved. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today on behalf of everyone on Long Island to welcome Romy, Emily, and Doran home after more than 470 days in Hamas captivity. We will not rest until every hostage comes home. I want to thank the previous administration and President Trump for working together to get this deal across the finish line. We will never forget October 7th, the single deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1,200 Israelis were brutally murdered by Hamas terrorists, including Omer Nutra of Long Island. The terrorist attacks of October 7th must never happen again. We must always stand with our ally, Israel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today in opposition to the Republicans' Reproductive Health Surveillance Care Act. I'm from Texas, and the last thing any Texan wants is the government telling doctors or women what they can or cannot do with their bodies. And that's exactly what this bill does. I was there in Texas in the state legislature when Texas Republicans wanted to pass this same bill. They wanted to use big government to reach into doctors' offices and make personal health care decisions on behalf of women in my state. These are complex medical issues, and no politician should be interfering in the lives of women and their families. Doctors have medical training. Politicians don't. We must protect the doctor-patient relationship. Simply put, Republicans should not have a seat at the table in your doctor's office. And it amazes me that my colleagues in the so-called party of small government continue to put forth bills that seek to control women, families, and doctors. I will always make sure women and families have the tools they need to make their own health care-related decisions. This misguided bill endangers the lives of women, and I urge my colleagues to oppose it. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous material on H.R. 471.
Without objection. Pursuant to House Resolution 53 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of H.R. 471. The Chair appoints the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Strong, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The House is in committee as a whole. House on the State of the Union for consideration H.R. 471, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to expedite under the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969 and improve forest management activities on National Forest System lands, on public lands under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Land Management, and on tribal lands to return resilience to overgrown, fire-prone forested lands and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read the first time. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and the ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources and their respective designees. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, and the gentleman from California, Mr. Huffman, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman.
Mr. Chair, I rise in strong support of H.R. 471, the Fix Our Forest Act, a bipartisan bill I am leading with my good friend from California, Representative Peters, along with 16 other Democrats and 37 additional Republican co-sponsors. Our prayers are with the people of California as they are enduring horrendous wildfires and experiencing loss of life and property. We have a unique opportunity today to put feet to those prayers and prevent those tragedies from happening again in the future. There are 2 reasons why we can't afford to wait any longer to reform forest management policies in this country. Number 1, the stakes are too high. And number 2, what we're doing is not working. First, let's talk about the stakes. The Los Angeles wildfires have caused unimaginable damage and will likely become the costliest in American history, with early estimates suggesting upwards of $250 billion in damages. More than 16,000 structures, homes, schools, grocery stores, entire neighborhoods, and communities have burned. And sadly, at least 28 people have tragically lost their lives. But we know, and we all know, that such figures can only tell part of the story. No price tag can be placed on the loss of a beloved family member or friend. No property valuation can register the pain a family feels after losing a home where cherished memories were made. No bookkeeping accounts for the lost dreams of a small business owner whose life work has gone up in smoke. These are the true cost, the human cost of catastrophic wildfire. Losing 16,000 structures is nearly unfathomable. Local officials reported that it looked like a bomb was dropped on these communities after the smoke had cleared. But what's truly startling is that there are 44 million homes in the wildland-urban interface nationwide, more than 70,000 communities just like Pacific Palisades, at risk of being wiped out by catastrophic fire. This brings to my second point. What we've been doing is not working. This bill passed the House last September with a strong bipartisan vote. Unfortunately, the Senate failed to move it. In the interim, more than 1.5 million more acres burned across the country. The Fix Our Forest Act offers a broad set of common sense solutions that must be enacted. This legislation creates a needed framework for prioritizing treatments in our highest risk areas. To identify these areas, FOFA utilizes state-of-the-art technology to determine the most vulnerable fire sheds across the country. Then it incentivizes the use of emergency actions to prevent wildfires. Many of these actions, like clearing brush and creating fuel breaks, are exactly what local authorities hastily undertook as they scrambled to save threatened neighborhoods in Los Angeles. The key difference, however, is that this bill ensures that such measures take place well before the fires start, not in the heat of an approaching blaze. Without these tools, completing a single forest management project takes an average of 3 to 5 years. Under FOFA, land managers can act immediately to protect communities. FOFA also expands existing categorical exclusions up to 10,000 acres so that prevention measures can meet the scale of the crisis. Under the status quo, if land managers want to reduce hazardous fuels in an area roughly the size of the Palisades fire, they would need 8 separate categorical exclusions. Under FOFA, they would only need 2. This change is based on proven results like the 10,000-acre CE in the Tahoe Basin. That was a bipartisan effort by Representative McClintock and the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. These efforts saved South Lake Tahoe from certain destruction during the Caldor fire. FOFA also protects communities by creating a community wildfire risk reduction program and clearing hazardous trees from utility rights-of-way to prevent fires like the ones that destroyed Lahaina in Maui and Paradise in California. FOFA supports wildland firefighters by creating a new casualty assistance program for firefighters killed or injured in the line of duty, ensuring they have access to the latest technology so they can detect and put out fires faster, and standardizing repayment timelines with local fire departments so non-federal partners aren't waiting years to get the money they are owed. I've only briefly described some of the important bipartisan pieces in FOFA, but it involves much more to make forests more resilient, healthier, and safer from sea to shining sea. All these tools available in this bill echo a similar theme. We must restore common sense to our approach to forest management. This comprehensive package is the result of years of hard work and bipartisan collaboration formulated through hearings, site visits, and member feedback. Fixing our forests should not be a partisan issue, and today it's not. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Arkansas reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of H.R. 471, the Fix Our Forest Act, sponsored by Chairman Westerman. And while this bill is flawed, and we'll be discussing those flaws here in a moment, I do appreciate that Chair Westerman and Representative Peters did come together and work on this issue in a bipartisan way that acknowledges our wildfire crisis. That is a good thing. Addressing that should be a bipartisan priority, and the Fix Our Forest Act includes some helpful provisions. For starters, it has incorporated a number of key democratic priorities that are in direct alignment with the recommendations of the Wildland Fire Mitigation and Management Commission. That's what's referenced in this poster here behind me. 148 nonpartisan consensus recommendations for making us safer from the threat of wildfire. And if this bill simply moved those consensus recommendations forward and also did something that the Commission told us we had to do, critical priority, fund them and make sure that the agencies responsible for overseeing these projects have staffing. If this bill were simply doing that, we wouldn't be here today because this bill would already be law. And many of these good things would already be keeping communities safer. But as you'll hear in a moment, this bill goes off on some tangents that have nothing to do with fire safety, and also, with respect to the good provisions it does include, fails to fund them. That's why we're here. That's why the path of this bill has been more complicated, and that is unfortunately a missed opportunity. We were able in this bill to include reauthorization of the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program and the Joint Chiefs Landscape Restoration Partnership, sponsored by our newly re-elected Federal Lands Subcommittee Ranking Member Joe Neguse. The latest version of the bill also includes a revamped version of the Fireshed Center, which aligns with several of the Commission's consensus recommendations aimed at enhancing coordination, using predictive services, and unifying decision-making capabilities. I am glad that this bill has evolved to include these priorities my Democratic colleagues have championed. In fact, we have Democratic bills that do all of these good things and more, because fire safety is a huge concern for all of us. But our Democratic bills do not pair these good provisions unnecessarily with harmful environmental rollbacks, and that, unfortunately, is what the bill before us does do. Now, if you scratch beneath the surface of H.R. 471, you start seeing problems, starting with the fact that the beneficial provisions are totally unfunded. There's simply no money, no resources to help any of the good things actually happen. And there are also several poison pills that have the potential to undermine science-based management and public engagement, on top of doing nothing to address the key driver of catastrophic wildfires, climate change. The so-called Fix Our Forest Act inappropriately co-ops emergency authorities under the National Environmental Policy Act, undercuts the Endangered Species Act, and even makes it more difficult for communities to engage and scrutinize or even know about projects that could directly impact them. Wildfire is deadly serious. In a matter of minutes, iconic landscapes, entire neighborhoods can be reduced to ashes. I know, because it's happened all too often in my district. It's not something politicians should use as a pretext to jam through unrelated industry favors or special interest agendas that undermine our foundational environmental protections. So let me be clear, House Democrats agree that we need to increase the pace and scale of restoration in our national forests and on public and private land. That's why we work to secure robust funding in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. This enabled the Biden-Harris administration to develop the wildfire crisis strategy and other key restoration activities. And thanks to the funding we provided, the Forest Service has been able to achieve record numbers for both hazardous fuels reduction and prescribed burning. They have even identified Southern California as a priority landscape through this work. The only thing holding them back from doing even more beneficial work on the ground is lack of money. However, as we're seeing with the Los Angeles fires, addressing the wildfire crisis is not all about work in the woods. Southern California is dominated by chaparral, where things like timber sales and clear cutting simply do not provide a fire safety solution for these communities. My Republican friends seem to think that logging is a panacea for fire safety, and in fact, it will do little or nothing to reduce wildfire risk in many of the most vulnerable communities. The fuel in the Los Angeles fires was not trees, the fuel was homes, schools, businesses. We will learn many lessons from this tragedy, but one that I hope we can take away right now is that we can't keep taking a siloed, myopic approach to wildfire management and prevention. Built environments, like Los Angeles, must be a priority. And we shouldn't have to fight lies and disinformation as our brave federal firefighters, who are already underpaid, are out there still fighting fires. I'd like to set the record straight on some of the misinformation and disinformation swirling around this debate. While Los Angeles has some of the strongest building codes and fire safety requirements in the nation, there are still thousands and thousands of homes that require retrofitting to ensure that they're adequately protected. Now, clearly, we've got a lot more work to do, and this bill misses the mark by failing to advance that work. Keeping homes and property resilient also requires constant upkeep and maintenance. Our communities need guidance, and again, more than anything else, they need resources to ensure that this happens. While Fix Our Forests includes a community wildfire risk program, which is a good thing, it's not enough. We need to pass the Wildfire Protection and Community Resilience Act that I introduced earlier this week with my Republican colleague, Congressman Obernolte, which provides actual resources to help local communities defend themselves from the growing danger of wildfires. Our bill would empower communities to implement science-based methods for mitigating wildfire damage, and we provide funding to design and implement new community protection and wildfire resilience plans with community members, first responders, and relevant state agencies. It would designate a targeted, specific grant program for home hardening within FEMA and add home hardening as an allowable project under an existing Forest Service program. The bill provides actual support with an adequate focus on the built environment, and that's why I filed it as an amendment to this bill. But unfortunately, the majority decided to move forward on this bill without allowing a vote on that and many other amendments. I had been hopeful that the amendment process would be an opportunity to address some of the critical gaps in this bill, especially the absence of a pay raise for our federal wildland firefighters, but that too has been left out. What happened in Los Angeles this month is a national tragedy, and in moments like this, we should overcome all politics and find ways to work together on solutions that actually help the people we're here to serve. And with that in mind, I want to discourage any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who might want to embrace this wrong-headed idea that relief and support for Los Angeles can somehow be a bargaining chip or used as leverage to advance other policy goals. You're not going to turn California into a red state by hijacking critically needed disaster relief. And in fact, a thought like that never would have crossed our minds when we had the back of the people in Florida and North Carolina and Louisiana, and when we have simply been fellow Americans helping each other in the face of these terrible tragedies. That's the way it's always worked in this Congress, and I hope we're not going to set a terrible new precedent now. I will be recommending a no vote on this bill today. I hope that we can continue to work together, however, to improve this bill and to address all of the critical issues that have been left out. I also hope when it comes to the broader critical need for federal disaster relief, we can remember that we're all fellow Americans and we need to have each other's back in these moments. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Chair, if throwing money at a problem would fix it, we wouldn't be having fires today. Over the past few years, our federal land managers have been showered with $12 billion to battle wildland fire and to make our forests more resilient. The result of that is the Forest Service estimates they're going to treat less acreage than they've treated before. It's not a money problem, it's a policy problem, and Fix Our Forest will help solve that problem. I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last 10 years, we've lost fully 1/4 of our federal forests to catastrophic fire. An untended forest is no different than an untended garden. It will grow until it chokes itself to death, and then it will succumb to disease, pestilence, drought, and ultimately catastrophic fire. This is how nature gardens. She doesn't care that it takes a century or more for a forest to regrow. We mortals do. Excess timber will come out of the forest in only two ways. Either we will carry it out, or nature will burn it out. That's why we created the Forest Service, to do our own gardening and remove excess timber before it can choke off the forest. Every year, foresters would mark off surplus timber, and we'd auction it off to logging companies who paid us to remove it. For a century, we enjoyed healthy, fire-resistant, and resilient forests. But then we passed bureaucratic laws that have made the active management of our forests all but impossible. A simple forest management plan now takes an average of 5.3 years to complete, and it costs millions of dollars, more than the value of the timber to be harvested. Since these laws were passed, timber harvested from the federal lands in California has fallen 75%, with a concomitant increase in acreage destroyed by fire. My friend Mr. Huffman is concerned about climate change and carbon dioxide. Well, he should know that a UCLA study revealed that just the 2020 fires in California alone released twice as much carbon dioxide as had been prevented by 17 years of the restrictions and regulations that California has imposed, costing its consumers and taxpayers billions of dollars. Now, we were able to get a categorical exclusion from NEPA for forest thinning projects in the Tahoe Basin in 2016. In the 9 years since its enactment, it's reduced the approval process for forest thinning projects at Tahoe from 5 years to less than 4 months. It's reduced the environmental reports from more than 800 pages down to a few dozen. Timber harvested has increased from roughly 1 million board feet a year to 9 million board feet a year. The treated acreage has tripled, and the Tahoe forests are returning to fire resiliency. This is what saved the city of South Lake Tahoe from the Caldor fire 2 years ago. Now, the town of Grizzly Flats, which was not protected by this law, was wiped out by the same fire. Now, I've been trying for years to expand these proven reforms to the rest of the national forest system through the Proven Forest Management Act. That measure is now included in this legislation, and its enactment is long overdue. This should not be a partisan issue. The choice is between policies that have proven to work and policies that have proven to fail. Let us return to the policies that work before we run out of forests to burn down. I yield back.
Reserve. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always refreshing to hear my colleagues across the aisle who typically deny climate science forcefully suddenly get interested in things like CO2 emissions, and they have discovered correctly that forest fires actually cause CO2 to go into the atmosphere. So I guess that's progress. I hope now they will begin to listen to the overwhelming majority of climate scientists who are saying that this fossil fuel energy bonanza of theirs is actually the primary driver of catastrophic climate change. It's the reason we have record-breaking disaster one after another because of this fossil fuel bonanza, and I hope that we can build on the progress, this awakening that we've begun to hear on at least some climate science. Now, it was mentioned by the chairman, I believe erroneously, that forest treatments have gone down since the passage of the legislation that I mentioned 2 Congresses ago. In fact, we need to do a little bit of correcting there. Since the passage of these 2 laws, the Forest Service has been treating a record number of acres, including a record number of prescribed fires in California and across the country. We also know that from 2002 to 2023, the Forest Service consistently increased the acres that it treated. But let's pick up where the Trump administration left off. 2.65 million acres treated in 2020, and we know that the Biden administration was able to treat 4.3 million acres, a lot more than the Trump administration in 2023. The numbers admittedly leveled off over the last 2 years because of Republican budget cuts, but they've still topped 4 million acres a year, and so it's a very different trajectory than what has been suggested. With that, I would like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Beyer.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the Fix Our Forests Act, and I rise to fight what could be the first successful attempt to undermine the Endangered Species Act. I believe that the California people deserve our urgent support to recover and rebuild from the tragic wildfires, and I'm disappointed that this was not a productive discussion, bipartisan discussion, to help address what they need. There are many excellent pieces of legislation that we should be looking at for that support, including many that are bipartisan, like the Modernization Wildfire and Safety and Prevention Act. Those bills provide much-needed funding, deliver desperately needed support to firefighters, and address the needs of frontline communities. This bill does not. Instead, it regurgitates long-held logging industry priorities to reshape environmental laws on Forest Service land and allow profit, not science, to dictate forest management decisions. As a co-chair of the Endangered Species Caucus, I am particularly troubled by this bill's rollback of the Endangered Species Act enforcement by overturning the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals Cottonwood decision. This decision basically says that when new science is emerged or develops on endangered species, it must be considered in Endangered Species Act protections. By the way, the science goes both ways. It can both identify new dangers, but it can also identify successes and reduce stresses to threatened species. The industry has long tried to include this so-called cottonwood fix in several pieces of must-pass legislation, most recently in the Farm Bill. And they now see, in the response to the California wildfires, their newest opportunity to undermine cottonwood. This industry wish list item would exempt federal land management agencies from reconsultation under the Endangered Species Act. That process ensures that federal agencies' land management plans incorporate the best available science as it becomes available. It is absolutely essential, but this is also a rare occurrence. It doesn't happen very often. When it does, it's important to consider it. As any student of history of science knows, our shared knowledge is continuously evolving through new inquiry and discovery. If we didn't incorporate new knowledge, we'd still be stuck with the geocentric model of the galaxy, placing the Earth